Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming out to yet another virtual DIGFM meeting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Romig, and I'm coming to you from beautiful Campbell, California. I am the Education Content Manager here at Claris and have been the host of the Santa Clara DIGFM meeting for, I think, coming on 2 years. Presented a few times on various subjects. And if you don't know, I'm one of the co-presenters tonight. So before we get to the presentation, I hope you guys are all dealing well with everything that's going on as best as you can during these crazy times. For me, this is day 4 of working from home with my kids being on summer vacation. So if you hear any screaming or fighting or noises that 2 brothers are likely capable of making over the next hour or so, all right, so here is our action-packed plans for the evening. I'm going to kick things off by highlighting some of the marquee features of FileMaker 19. Now, I'm not going to go in super deep in any of the new features and functionality of Claris FileMaker 19, but those that are following me might. We are lucky enough to be joined by a plethora of beeswax folks tonight. One might say they are the 3 amigos. See what I just did there? First up, we've got Joshua Meier talking about what you can do with your iOS device and near-field communications. I should have just used the abbreviation of NFC. Brendan Pierce will show us what you can do with a WebViewer and JavaScript. And we'll finish things off with a friend of the program, Vince Menanno, who is going to showcase the latest version of InspectorPro. And throughout, we're going to have plenty of time for QA. My presentation isn't going to be that long. Can't speak for the rest of the guys. We usually go 2 hours. We'll see how things go tonight. But feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. Now, I'm going to do my best to remember to ask for questions along the way. But sometimes as I get rolling and we're in a virtual environment, I'll forget. So with that said, keep yourself on mute as much as possible. And but if you do have a question, feel free to chime in at any time. By the way, if none of you have seen the movie 3 Amigos, this slide and my lame references probably made no sense to you, but more likely, I just figured out your weekend movie watching plans, so you're welcome. Okay, so today we are gathered to talk about the FileMaker 19 platform. Now, I'm going to primarily focus on FileMaker Pro as that's where most of the significant changes have taken place, although FileMaker Go has some pretty cool new toys as well. But Claris 19, or Claris FileMaker 19, is a release that if you're an existing customer or developer looking for modern tools to create modern apps, you got to be pretty jazzed. We have a lot of cool things in here that you're going to like. And if you've been looking for Claris to release features, functionality on a more regular basis, this release marks the beginning of something magical for you guys as well. And if you're looking to be able to format a field using scientific notation finally, well, FileMaker Pro is most definitely the place to be. So with the introduction of the FileMaker 19 platform, Claris continues to offer the ideal path to deliver on modern custom apps using a platform you guys already know and are familiar with. So Claris enables the problem solver to create apps that make businesses better, whether those are designing those apps or just wading into the shallow end of the FileMaker pool for the first time. Now, those same businesses can rapidly build the apps they need using modern technology like cloud, like mobile, like artificial intelligence. They can also connect those apps with other apps to automate workflows and deliver even more value. Now, for most, they can do all of this themselves with the support of the Claris community. But if you or they don't have the time, there are plenty of Claris partners right around the corner to help you out. Now, we can do all of these things because we're on a mission to make powerful technologies available to everyone. Powerful technologies mean things like the cloud, like artificial intelligence, things that I just mentioned on the previous slide. The technologies that our customers are asking for and that they require in their modern apps. Also, we want to make sure that the power of the cloud smart technology is available not just in the cloud, but on every device, on-premise, offline, you name it. So as you know, we make low-code technology accessible to all users, but it's also easily extended by all professional developers out there. So it really is powerful technology available to everybody. So this takes us to the next chapter of Claris FileMaker Pro. With this new chapter, we are moving away from the big annual releases that we're all accustomed to. Claris FileMaker 19 is our first open platform, which means more features, more updates, more functionality in your hands faster and more frequently. So with this release, you can all extend the platform and your apps with things like AI and JavaScript. You can build shareable packaged add-ons to build modern custom apps that improve your workplace, your workflow, your apps in general. Now, the FileMaker 19 platform's been out for about 6 weeks. We launched on May 20th, some of you didn't know. Now, during that time, we've had some great feedback from all of you and, quite frankly, the rest of the developer community. And much of this early enthusiasm centers around the advancements we made with the integrating of JavaScript right into the FileMaker platform. Now, you call it what you will, but the Java integration in FileMaker is a game changer. You're going to be able to do some amazing things with your apps going forward. With JavaScript, you can extend your apps beyond the native FileMaker tools for design and functionality. And with FileMaker 19, you can create powerful and modern apps using available JavaScript libraries, or if you're so inclined, you can create your own and display it in a web viewer. Now, you can directly embed things into your apps like maps, like animated graphics, calendars, monitor controls, data visualization, and a whole lot more using JavaScript libraries. These libraries are constantly getting updated, and new ones are getting created all the time by the huge JavaScript community that's out there. So support for JavaScript in FileMaker provides an unlocked universe of tools lying at your fingertips without having to leave the FileMaker platform at all. So with Claris FileMaker 19, you can deliver on the expectations of reliable custom apps, but also adding on top of that, meeting new standards of visualization and capabilities your customers have been asking for. So on the screen right now are just 3 examples of what is possible now with JavaScript support in FileMaker 19. Now, it's true, you could use JavaScript in a web viewer in previous versions of FileMaker, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. It wasn't very elegant. But now you can save more time with the integration that we now have in 19. So in FileMaker 19, JavaScript in a web viewer, along with your scripts, can communicate directly with each other and pass information back and forth through a new script step and function that we've introduced in FileMaker 19. But we realize that not every developer has JavaScript skills or the dedicated time to learn a new programming language. I definitely fall in that camp. I am not a JavaScript expert at all, but remember that Claris's vision is powerful technology available to everyone. So coming soon, Claris will release modular JavaScript-based add-on components. These components can be added to layouts using drag and drop and will feature things like a Kanban board, photo gallery, barcode generator, and much, much more. Now, oh, yes? No? Okay. Who?
Might have to mute, do a blanket mute.
I'm going to have a hard time doing that without bailing out of my presentation because I can't see any of the controls anymore. So if anybody is not muted, it would be great if you could mute yourself. So you're going to be able to do all of these things, but you're not going to have to wait for FileMaker 20 or whatever we're going to end up calling it, because this functionality is going to be in your hands. It's going to be measured in weeks or months and not years or a year as it has been in the historically in the past. Now, as a reminder, Brendan from Beeswax is here and is going to take a deeper dive, I think, into the integration possibilities of JavaScript and the WebViewer in FileMaker 19. So stay tuned. Now, with that said, snapping together robust apps faster than ever with add-on components does not begin and end with JavaScript. We've dedicated a lot of time and resources towards XML representation of the platform to be used as a foundation for moving solutions forward. So we saw this as the genesis and the beginning of the benefits as we walk through the add-on table features from a few versions back. By the way, that feature has moved from the portal setup dialog box to a tab on the left-hand side of the screen when you're in layout mode. So shareable add-on components are the next logical step along this path. And without thinking too much about it, the opportunity for this is enormous. You can create your very own usable code or functionality for faster deployment, or a module that you could use as a fee-based app. Or perhaps in the future, you could use add-ons in a much larger community-driven marketplace. Now, you can begin experimenting with your own add-on components today through a preview script step available in FileMaker 19 called Save a Copy as an add-on package. Now, yesterday, or at least I think it was yesterday, Code dropped an add-on for their day back calendar. Now, I debated whether to show it to you guys, but I figured I'm not an expert on that, and it would probably be better if you guys checked it out on your own. But what it does do is it shows for sure the power of add-ons. They've got a quick demo video up on their website that shows you how to add their calendar technology to any app that you have. They happen to use one of the starter solutions, I believe, in their example, but it doesn't matter. You can take any file that you want and add their calendar technology to it pretty easily. The great thing about add-ons is that add-ons can add things like tables and fields, sample data, scripts, relationships, basically you name it. And if you add an add-on table to your solution and then you change your mind, you can right-click on the add-on and uninstall it, and all the stuff that I just rattled off, like the fields and the tables and the scripts, those all get removed from your solution. So what this does is it allows you to experiment with add-ons all you want without having to worry about them screwing up your existing solutions. Anyway, I would recommend that you check out Code and their dayback calendar if you want to get a quick taste of what an add-on can do. I think when I was poking around on their website, they offer a 30-day trial, but definitely go to their website and check it out just to be sure. All right. So the hits keep on coming. Next, let's explore a few new enhancements on iOS that continue on the road toward integrating powerful modern tools right into the FileMaker platform. How about making your app smarter? That sounds pretty cool, right? Talking about powerful modern tools on iOS goes hand in hand with discussing some of Apple's most advanced technologies that are available on your iPhone or your iPad today, such as artificial intelligence. So let's jump right in and talk about FileMaker's support for Apple's Core ML, or machine learning framework, that is available on most modern iOS and macOS devices. With machine learning, systems can essentially start teaching themselves and making accurate predictions. So for example, There's a machine learning model for sentiment analysis so that a computer system can reveal the tone of feedback on a company's website. Or perhaps you want to see who the artist of a photograph is, or a painting that you come across. Now, on the case on the screen, for those of you who were at the developers conference last year, you saw Robert demonstrate this, where you're given a car part, but that you're not familiar with. You can use Core ML to identify the part and determine if you have that item in stock or not. So after taking a picture of the part, a list of possible results are returned along with the model's percentage of confidence, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen. By the way, that confidence is in a range of 0 to 1. So you can see in the example here, the very first thing that's returned, the fuel filter 33002, it's practically 1, right? So it knows without much of a doubt at all that that is indeed a fuel filter. Okay, so using Core ML in your FileMaker apps comes down to 4 things. Now, the most significant piece is that you'll need to hunt down a Core ML model or file. There's a bunch of them on the internet. Many of them are available for free. Some of them are available from Apple and Amazon. I've got a demo in just a few minutes that is using one of the Core ML models that I downloaded directly from Apple's website. However, if you're savvy enough, you can build your own. So you need that file, but then besides the Core ML file, you will need a container field or two to store not only this Core ML file that you gathered from Apple or Amazon or wherever you end up getting it, but you probably will also need another container field to store the image or text that you want to analyze. Now, you're also going to need to use the new configure machine learning model script step to load that Core ML model that you want into memory. Without doing that, the Core ML functionality doesn't do much. So you'll definitely need to remember before you do anything else, well, of course, once you get your file, is you're going to need to load that file into memory so that FileMaker knows how to use it. And then finally, you're going to need to use the compute model function that provides the Core ML model with its input data and formats the output for analysis or display on your screen. So let's take a closer look at this feature. So as I said, I've got one quick demo that identifies items in an image when I drag them into a container field. And then I also have a short video that identifies landmarks in images and displays where those landmarks are on a map. So let's bail out of here for a second. And I am going to drag some stuff over here for you. You can tell I spent let me get rid of this real quick before I bring it over. You can tell I spent a great amount of time on this layout here. What's going on here? So I have the model that I'm going to use in this container field right here. Just to make sure that it's in memory, I just created a button over here that loads it into memory. I then have a container field here that I'm going to drag a series of images into. Down here is going to be all of the analysis that comes back from analyzing the picture. And then what I did over here on this side is I just wrote a quick calculation to just pull out the first one that it came across. Now, some of these pictures that I have, for those of you who don't know, and there's no reason why any of you would know, I am a huge Disney fan, so some of these pictures are going to be Disneyland related, but I picked some of them on purpose just to show you what the model, or at least this particular model, can and cannot do. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a picture of Lightning McQueen. So it's going to think for a second. Now, this model's not smart enough to know that that's Lightning McQueen. That would be super cool. But it did immediately come back with that it knew that it was a sports car of some sort. And you can see here that on a scale of 0 to 1, at 0.8, it's pretty confident that it's a race car. And then right underneath it, it also came up with some other things that, you know, it thought Lightning McQueen was a convertible. 0.4, that's pretty low. But it nailed the fact that this picture that I just dragged into this container field was some form of car. All right, so we're going to make things a little bit harder now. For those of you on the West Coast, it's dinner time, so you're going to get a little bit hungry here. So we have a pretzel, a Mickey pretzel, and it was able to identify that this was a pretzel. And again, it's pretty much 100% sure that it's a pretzel. But then it kind of goes off the rails a little bit and thinks that maybe it's a bagel, but it is some form of baked good item. But it definitely knew that it was a pretzel. All right, now the third one that I'm going to bring over is a picture from the Jungle Cruise. Now there's a lot going on the Jungle Cruise if you've ever been on it. So here is a picture of an elephant taking a bath in a waterfall. Now this particular model picked out the fact that there was a waterfall, or in this case, it identified it as a fountain. And again, it's a 0.98 something or other. So it's really sure that it has, that there's a fountain or some form of water structure in there. But then it kind of goes nuts here a little bit and thinks it's a brown bear. But amazingly enough, not only does it identify it as being an elephant, but it also identified it as being an Indian elephant. But you can see that the confidence level is pretty much non-existent. And then the last one that I wanted to show, not Disney related, but we happened to watch a dog for a friend of ours a couple of weeks ago, and he was super cute. And so I wanted to use him in this demo. So you could see that this model was able to identify, not only was this a dog, but right away it identified this dog as a golden retriever. So this is just one case or one use case of a model. And as I said, there's hundreds of models out there. Maybe there is a Disney one. I should have probably looked harder for that, but I didn't. And maybe if I get smart enough and learn how to use these, I can create my own. So that was example number one. Now, example number two is a video with no sound. Some of you may have seen this already, but it is pretty impressive. I'm gonna fire it up on my main screen here and then bring it over. And then I'll make it big so you guys can all see it. So what this is gonna do, there is a series of images, 8 images here, of famous landmarks from around the world. And they're going to get dropped into this container field here. And then the model that is being used for this particular example is going to display a map in this web viewer over here showing exactly where the landmark is. So it's about a minute long, but let's start it off. So we got New York City, and sure enough, it nails the fact that it's New York City. And the next one is the Golden Gate Bridge right up the street. And sure enough, it knows that that's the Golden Gate Bridge and displays it on the map. Grand Canyon nails the Grand Canyon as well. Again, very impressive just by looking at the picture. It can tell what's not only what the picture is, but where it's located. The Sydney Opera House, there it is in Australia. And then the Eiffel Tower, there it is right in Paris. So on and so on. So we're back to New York with the Statue of Liberty, the pyramids, and then last but not least, we have the Washington Monument. And so again, very, very cool technology and opens up all kinds of possibilities for your solutions as far as what you're going to design in FileMaker. Any questions so far now that I've remembered that I needed to ask for
Hi,
questions?
this is Richard.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Paul. How are you?
Well, I think Richard's answering a phone call.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, I got a question.
Yeah.
Where did you get those
Sort of
models?
watching an online webinar right now, but I thought I'd
so
go ahead and take the call because I can
can't
watch
speak
it without
for the
sound. But
one,
are
I
you
can
having an
definitely
issue?
provide you some. I can definitely provide you a link of where I grabbed the one from Apple. It was basically on their developer site. It was pretty much in plain sight, so I didn't have to look for it too hard. But if you want to know specifically which one I used, I'll like tomorrow I'll add to the post in community and let you know where I found it.
Awesome, thanks.
Do you have the contact who you were sending the proposal to? Do you know who that is? Or
I think we need to talk to Richard.
Sure.
Yeah, Steve, you might want to mute Richard.
All right, let me
Do that. You can exit
yeah.
and mute.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to exit or at least stop sharing my screen for a second. Or wait a minute, maybe I can do this.
Okay. Steve, if you hover over that mouse at the top of the screen, those controls should show up.
Where's Richard? Oh, right here. All right, he is muted.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, back to sharing my screen.
Hey, Steve, I had a question. How large is the model, like in kilobytes?
Super small. It is, well, not super small. This particular one is 17.1 megabytes.
What is the scope of the model?
Don't know.
Oh. Can they do face recognition?
Like identify you versus me.
Yes.
This particular model, I'm sure there is one that can, or you could certainly create one that does. This particular model, probably the best that it could do would be identify either you or me as a face or a male or something along those lines, but it's not specific enough. Like it wouldn't know that Steve Romig was Steve Romig or Eric Matthews was Eric Matthews, but there's no reason why you couldn't create one that would do that.
Because when you use a like iPhoto or whatever on the Mac, it does that face recognition. Is it using Core ML there?
Good question. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, although I would logically think that perhaps that's happening, but I really don't know.
The feature uses Core ML. It's a Mac-only feature. Or iOS/Mac only feature.
All right, I got sidetracked here. Let me bring my screen back into view here. And fire back up Keynote. Get rid of this. Guys, see my screen? Oh.
We did.
You did for a second, right? How about now?
Yep, it's back.
Let me get rid of that. Okay. All right, so we talked about this. Okay, so continuing with new features that make your device smarter is the ability to use your voice to run automation like searching for records or updating inventory or starting a process with support in FileMaker Go. You can do all of this using support for Siri shortcuts. So in other words, you can run a script in your FileMaker Go solutions using your voice. Now, hopefully you guys are all familiar with Siri shortcuts. This is some technology that came out a couple of iOS versions ago. It's also tied to an app that initially was not installed by default on your phone, but now is, called Shortcuts. So in order to use Siri shortcuts, you need to do a few things. To begin with, you need to have a file. So we'll assume that we all have a file that has a bunch of scripts in it. And in that file, in FileMaker Pro, you need to enable the FMP URL script extended privilege. Then, in the script workspace, and I'm showing an example of this on the screen right now, you need to right-click on a script and choose Enable Shortcuts Donation. This action needs to be done on each script that you want to make available to the Shortcuts app or Siri Shortcuts. And once you've done that, you got to get your file over to FileMaker Go. Now, when you open up your file in FileMaker Go that has scripts marked to be donated as shortcuts, or to shortcuts, I should say, the scripts are automatically donated. So then you jump over to the Shortcuts app, and then you can create a shortcut that uses that donated script. Then to run it, you can either run it directly from the Shortcuts app, but more likely you're going to use Siri and speak the shortcut's name. Now, regardless of which method that you choose to use, this will do a few things. It will fire up FileMaker Go if it's not already open. It will open up the file that is specified to be opened. The script that is in that file that is specified in the series shortcut will then execute. That's pretty cool stuff. I played around with it a little bit. I don't really have a real world example on the third floor here of my house, but it works as advertised. You can run FileMaker scripts by just saying, hey Siri, run blah, 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 blah. And it does some pretty cool stuff. All right. Finally, or not finally, but let's
We
briefly
have a couple questions on that, by the way.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's see. I guess Stephen was asking, what's the best way to deploy shortcuts to all users other than MDM?
Great question. Don't have a great answer. I mean, the bottom line is you need to be able to get the file onto the person's device in order for, and that file needs to be opened once in order for the Shortcuts app to know that there are some scripts available in that file to be donated. So MDM, definitely, I mean, if you hadn't said other than MDM, that would have been my first suggestion. But above and beyond that, unless somebody else has a suggestion, I don't know what the real world solution for that is at this point. But I'm sure there's somebody out there that knows.
Does the file need to be physically on locally on your iOS device, or can you open it from the server?
That's actually a really good question, and I meant to try that. I don't see why it would matter, but I would have to try that to know for sure. I'll
whatever the script does, the only thing here is that iOS knows the name of it and it knows what script to call. If the script does whatever it does, it will do that activity. It will open up a file wherever it exists if the script is capable of doing that.
So if I'm opening that file from server, is it FileMaker Go is able to discover those scripts?
It's just standard FileMaker scripting. If the script opens it, then all you're doing is calling the script.
It has to know to use FileMaker when I'm talking to it, right?
That's part of the registration process on your iOS device. You're telling it what file and where the script is.
By the way, definitely Eric, especially, or anybody for that matter, just the way that I have things set up right now, I can't see the chat. So if people are posting questions in chat, which is great, definitely interrupt me and let me know that there are some there, because otherwise, while I'm sharing my screen, I really can't see the chat stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I think Vince and I are watching that.
Good. All right, so we got NFC. NFC stands for Near Field Communication and is designed to be a method of exchanging data quickly with compatible devices or tags that are close to each other. Another technology that is very similar to this that maybe you've heard of before is Apple Pay. NFC, therefore, can be compatible with the hundreds of millions, probably, of contactless cards and readers that are already deployed worldwide. Although, chances are you're not going to be coming out with a competing version of Apple Pay using this technology in FileMaker Go, but the technology is there if you want to give it a shot. This functionality is made possible using the new configure NFC reading script step. Again, as a reminder, Joshua is here tonight and he's going to provide some additional information about this cool new feature in FileMaker Go, so hang in there. All right, so the final big highlight of the evening, at least for me, I think, is I wanted to point out the ability to create FileMaker solutions directly in FileMaker Cloud. Now, when you hear cloud, there's all levels of expectations that a cloud is fast and a straightforward environment. And for the most part, it is. However, our current experience and workflow of getting a custom app up to the cloud, while it's not hard, involves more steps than it probably should, right? It begins with creating your solution on your desktop, and it ends with uploading that solution to the cloud. And in between, you've got to configure security. You might have to enable WebDirect and a few other things. But with FileMaker 19, we're taking another step towards a zero configuration deployment model. So now, when you create a new file, you can choose a FileMaker Cloud instance as the location where you want to save the file. Therefore, you cut down on a number of clicks that are necessary to bring your apps up to the cloud. Well, not today, but with version 18. And as a bonus, this feature also enables WebDirect automatically. So your file is ready for the web without you having to do anything. So that's it for the prominent features. I'm going to take a drink of water here real quick. There's a bunch of miscellaneous improvements and enhancements I wanted to touch on before I hand things over to Beeswax. These are listed in no particular order, although the card one is probably the most exciting out of all of these, I think. In a nutshell, cards are now supported with FileMaker WebDirect. This includes support for adjust window, move resize window, the new window, script step. So cards in WebDirect. Going down the list, you can navigate layouts faster while you're in layout mode using hotkeys now. In layout mode, you can press Control-Alt-K on Windows and Command-Alt-K on the Mac to open up a shortcut dialog that you can enter the name of the layout you want to navigate to. I kind of see this functionality as being pretty similar to the Spotlight search functionality on Mac OS, where if you press the Command spacebar, a search dialog comes up. Now, in order to really use this feature, you're going to need to know the name of your layout that you want to navigate to. So as you start typing it in, it will filter out all your layout names as you type. And then when it gets down to a more manageable list, if you need to, you can simply click on the layout that you want to go to, and boom, you're there. Needless to say, this only works in layout mode, if I didn't say that already. What's next? Oh, page count. So this is a feature that I would have bet $1 was already in the product, but it's a nice addition to your developer toolkit, and that is support for the page count symbol to print page numbers with a page count similar to like page 1 out of 10. It would be the 10 in that little scenario there. So the application preferences have been updated to allow for configuring of a file that you want to have open automatically when FileMaker Pro is launched. Now, this feature will also reflect any settings that you might have used as part of the insisted install text file, as the automated install feature that we've had for several versions. But it makes it a whole lot easier to change and turn on and off if you need to. If you've ever used the insisted install feature before, you'll know that there's really no way to configure the file that is being opened automatically easily. If that file is deleted, if it's moved, if you don't want it anymore, the only way that you could really disable it or change it would be to reinstall the product. But now, if you use the insisted install, any settings that you have there will be reflected in the preferences, and you can change the file if you want, or you can turn the feature off completely. Not super exciting, but we've updated the in-product links to help customers get to things like the Claris Marketplace faster, as well as our new learning environment, Claris Academy. For those of you who haven't checked out Claris Academy, go check it out. It's a pretty solid V1. We're going to be adding new features and content to it going forward. So we know it's a little sparse right now, but this is a project that is near and dear to my heart. So go check it out, and hopefully you'll see some benefits in it. All right, so the last three on this list are all macOS only features. The first one is support for dark mode. There is no configuration or toggle within FileMaker Pro itself for this feature. Instead, the UI or the Chrome, whatever you want to call it, the program itself will reflect whatever system settings you have set up. So keep in mind, this is not going to affect your layouts at all. Only things like the inspector and the menu bar and things like that. In support of this, I got to read this, the get high contrast color function, which believe it or not has been around for a while, but was pretty worthless on the Mac side. In fact, if you ran it on the Mac side, I don't think it returned anything or it returned an error. It's been modified and changed to be get system appearance. Now, if you use the get system appearance function on the Mac, if you're running in dark mode, it will return the string dark aqua. And if you're not running in dark mode, I assume that means light mode. I don't know if that's the official term or not. It will just return the word aqua. The next one, the drag and drop installer, the support guy in me should be jumping up and down about this feature. Too bad we didn't have this when I was in support however many years ago, but the Mac finally has a drag and drop installer. So you just take it out of the DMG file or wherever you get it and just boop, plop it in your applications folder and you're good to go. Very, very nice and long overdue. And then finally, the Mac gained support for the high efficiency image format for images on layouts and in container fields and can be viewed on Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, things like that.
I had a couple questions there.
Yes.
I go two asking the same question. How does an assisted install work with drag and drop installation on the Mac?
I should know the answer to this question, and I don't know if anybody on the call knows the answer to this question, but I don't know the answer to this question.
I do.
Yay.
Yeah. So you're still calling a script when you do the drag and drop. The script captures the information from the assisted install and uses it.
Usually that assisted installs inside of a DMG, read-only DMG. So
Yeah.
where do you find the assisted install file?
You're basically still in an ISO, or yeah, it's still in its installer. The assisted install is next to it, just like the old rules, and it uses it.
So how do we change that file?
That's a problem I don't know.
So we would just probably recreate the DMG then and
I
change
think that the ISO is allowed to be edited. I'm not sure about that, but that means that you could take everything as it is. And ISO is basically.
So I can actually answer this per the FileMaker documentation because we've been talking about this. You're supposed to be able to drag and drop the assisted install text file on the FileMaker icon. This is per the FileMaker network documentation, but it's not working right now. So your other options are to put it in a folder, like I think Vince was saying there, or use the ARD packager to build a proper package for install. So this has been discussed not at length on the public community forums, but on a couple other email lists I'm on that everybody's saying it's broken. It's not following what the documentation says.
The drag and drop installer is an Apple feature. So it may have simple rules like if I drag it on the applications folder, it runs the installer. If you drag it elsewhere, it may do a copy of the install. So you might be able to copy it elsewhere and then change the assisted install and then do the change. I'm not exactly sure how that stuff works. So,
but yeah, I mean, we just had to roll out. Well, we just had to build a package for a prep for rollout for 19, and the only way that the assisted install is working is via the the remote desktop packager. So that's what the documentation says. so.
Eric, send that to me and I'll have someone look at it on the Pro team.
Thanks, Keith. Were there other questions? I'll take the silence as a no. I wandered away from my desk here, so let me get back. Okay, I only have a couple more slides. So real quick, I wanted to point out some in-product rebranding that has taken place. Most of this you guys are probably aware of, or we're expecting, no big surprises. For example, FileMaker ID is now referred to as Claris ID, and the FileMaker Customer Console is now the Claris Customer Console. Now, what might have been a tiny bit of a surprise for some of you on May 20th is that FileMaker Pro Advanced is no more. We only have FileMaker Pro. Now, don't worry, all the features of FileMaker Pro Advanced are still in there, like the script debugger and the data viewer, and they're all in the same place with one exception. And we'll talk about that exception in a second. And you still turn these features on in the same way by enabling the advanced tools in the preferences. So back to the one exception. So with the launch of FileMaker 19, we say goodbye to an old friend, and that old friend is runtimes. So as most of you probably know, runtimes have been on the deprecated list for quite some time now. Now, I know this news is going to be disturbing to some of you, but the reality is that runtime functionality, it has been updated in several versions, and therefore it's got bugs, and it certainly has compatibility issues with modern operating systems, and it was just too heavy of a lift to move forward. Is there a replacement for runtimes on the horizon? I don't know at this time, but if you are really, really dependent on runtimes, then my suggestion would be to keep a copy of FileMaker Pro 18 Advanced installed on your system, because that will be the last version of FileMaker Pro that will be capable of creating runtimes. What is on the deprecated list that you may not be aware of, but it just as a reminder, just so you can prepare, although not nearly as big of a hit as maybe runtimes is to some of you, is that peer-to-peer networking is on the deprecated list. Now, it still works as it always has, but if your solutions are using peer-to-peer, you might want to start preparing for this feature not to be supported. Just as an FYI, the main reason that peer-to-peer is still in the product is it is seen as a need for many FileMaker Go deployments. All right, so here's a quick list of the 19 supported operating systems. The operating system that may stand out here for some of you is support for Windows Server 2019. This has been a big request from our community and users for quite some time. I think support hears about it almost on a daily basis. So we now support it. And on the Mac, no big surprises. We'll support the current version and one version back. And well, it's not on this slide because I can't look into the future, but it is safe to assume that we'll also support whatever updates to the Mac OS that Apple might announce or come out with in the fall, which they historically do. And then on the Go side of things, any device that is capable of running iOS 13.2 should also work with FileMaker Go 19. And we support all the latest browsers. This list hasn't really changed that much other than the versions that they keep going up and up and up. So, you know, Safari, Edge, Chrome, all those have pretty much stayed the same from for the last several versions. So that's a quick overview of Claris FileMaker 19. I think there's a lot to be excited about here. If you're a developer, I'm hoping your mouth is watering with all the possibilities available to you and to all of your apps. Now, before I hand things over to the guys at Beeswax, do you guys have any final questions? Now, I know there were some questions posted on the community prior to this meeting. I think 2 of them may have been answered already, or at least we have the makings of an answer. But now I'm forgetting what the middle question was, and I did not write it down. There was something about the default fields. I think we may have answered that one, or at least are coming to an answer for that one. There was a question about what to do. He has an ETS version that's showing up. I posted a suggestion about that one. I don't know if it was helpful, but we might need to do a little bit more digging about that one. But I can't remember what the middle one is. If whoever posted that's on the call and wants to refresh my memory, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll catch up to that.
Steve, it was regarding AppleScript, and I think you replied about JavaScript, something related to that. Is that right?
That was only like an hour ago, and I already forgot. I will circle back on the community tomorrow and make sure that that question gets answered.
Is that Dennis's question?
Was it Dennis's question? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was my question, and I think you already answered it.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Well, if any more questions come up while we're here tonight, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Beeswax for their part of the show.
Can I make mention of one thing, Steve?
Yes.
That I would have added to what you were talking about with deprecation is that the script step for get application version will not pick up the word advanced anymore. So if you have any existing things out there that are looking for that word, you're going to have to change them.
That is an excellent point, and that was in my notes, and I completely forgot to mention that. But that is definitely a good point that you'll need to modify. You know, whether it's startup script or whatever scripts that you have that is using that function, so it's pointing or not pointing, but referring to the new name and not the word advanced anymore. That's a thank you for mentioning that. Okay, who's next? You can share your screen. I'm going to stop my stuff here.
Hey, Stephen, can we do the traditional 5-minute break?
We can.
I'll be right back.
Was there anything that you were expecting me to say that I didn't say? Was that a good overview? Did you like, I already knew all that stuff? Did you learn something?
Dennis is yes paddle. I saw that, Dennis.
Well, I stopped sharing so I can see what's going on now, although not too many people have their cameras on and they shouldn't. So that's no Dennis, only Dennis will understand this, but no Jeopardy sample app in 19, unfortunately. A big oversight in my opinion.
Did you ever get the buzzers working?
You know what? I haven't tried, but when I knew that we were going to start, when we were going to introduce JavaScript, I was like, the first thing I thought of was like, wow, I can make some pretty cool new enhancements to the Jeopardy thing whenever I teach myself how to do JavaScript.
Well, you're ahead of me.
I was
haven't
gonna,
done. I was just going to say, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I do a lot of our worldwide training for support, and I've used various games that I designed in FileMaker, Jeopardy, Family Feud, $20,000 Pyramid, a couple of other ones. And several DevCons ago, Dennis came up to me, and I forget how he knew that I was doing this, but he also has a Jeopardy game also, so we were comparing notes. Anyway, what was the question that was coming up before I interrupted?
oh, I was gonna say, Steve, the other thing other than runtimes, if at least if the product price supports it, the other program to look at is the SBA program, that is via the FBA program, where you can bundle full copies of FileMaker, you know, as part of your vertical solution. So. I know of at least 2 other partners who are switching to the SBA program from using runtimes. So. Yeah.
Are you guys excited about the new agile world of FileMaker where you're going to get a bunch of new features faster?
Absolutely.
I'll believe it when I see it. So,
All right.
Okay, let's maybe get started again. Are we ready to do that?
Sure.
Yes. All right. Okay then. Hi everyone. I'm Josh.
Don't forget. Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right, there we go. All right, so I'll be presenting on the new NFC stuff for FileMaker 19. So yeah, basic primer and overview. NFC, you need a tag or and a tag reader. In this case, any tag reader would be any iPhone that's older than iPhone 7. So if you've got one and you got a copy of FileMaker 19, it'll work. And a tag you can buy off of Amazon or many other sites nowadays, since the technology's gotten cheaper and easier to implement. All right. So basics are, if you've got a capable phone for NFC, you can install any kind of tag writing app. I use one called NFC Tools. Got it off the App Store. It's free with a couple of paid features like being able to write data from a QR code into your tag, but not right now. So this is a small demo I recorded for how to write to an NFC tag. Damn it. Yeah, so this is a tag that I wrote earlier, and it's got some dummy data on it that I'm going to overwrite with other records. So I have a plain text record. I have a text record that I formatted to be like JSON that can be read by FileMaker as JSON as well. And I have some FMP URLs that I wrote and I can run with my demo app later in the presentation, as well as a V card, which FileMaker can read and utilize as well. And these are the various kinds of data that you can add to an NFC card and have to be picked up, things like Wi-Fi networks or phone numbers and things like that. So now I've tapped my NFC card on the reader and written to it, and you can see all the data that was there before has now been overwritten. Yeah, so that's tag writing. It's simple. You can find any free app to do it on the App Store, and all you need is a packet of tags and an NFC-capable smartphone. Okay, and as for the demo itself, it's pretty simple, just to show some stuff that you could do. So I wrote a custom function up to help parse out the NFC FileMaker's NFC return. So we have the results of when the NFC dialog gets canceled by the user, and now we have the results of when we have the successful read. And now we have the parsed payload that I wrote up and I pulled out. So the way FileMaker reads and parses all the NFC data, what's the word? It assigns it a category from the tag as written before. There were the text records that I wrote in. And then there are the URL type records that I wrote in, and they ran as FMP URLs with and without parameters. And there's also vcard data, which I wasn't able to actually manage to grab fully, but FileMaker does support being able to read it, so there. And yeah, that's what I have. Are there any questions or?
Can you show the scripting and maybe
Yeah.
yeah.
So all the NFC scripting starts from the configure NFC reading script step. So you can set whichever script you want to run, and it'll show itself as such. So this was the basic read results, just to have the FileMaker's stuff show up, and this and my the parse output from my custom function, and this was just a loop I wrote to separate and set out all the different kinds of data, and run all the FMP URLs that I could find within the tag, just as an example. And this is just a basic script for running as a test. So yeah, are there any questions or things like that?
There's a couple of questions from Jan Rosen, and his question is this interrupt driven? I mean, I can bring a device close to a trigger, close trigger to a script.
Not quite sure I understand the question. Sorry.
Well, my guess is he's wondering if do you have to push a button, or can you just hold your phone right up to a card and all of a sudden just.
No, I believe that you would have to. No, you have to trigger the script manually.
Okay. But it's my understanding. This is Steve. It's my I may be wrong, but it's my understanding that what he said is true. But then the script will continue to listen until you tell it not to.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. There's a built-in timeout to run for as long as you want it in seconds, and you can also set it to have it a.
Yeah, show the NFC controller script. So it's going to call a script called show NFC read results once the data, the NFC reader has found a result. And you've given it a timeout of 6 seconds, I believe that is. So once you call the script, it's waiting for that amount of time for a result. And then when it does, it calls that script with the result.
And I think you also get the interface kind of from iOS floating up above, right? Waiting. Yeah. So it's, John, I don't know if you were thinking that maybe you could have your own interface and just bring the phone next to a card or something like that. But you would get the interface of the iOS looking for a read.
I guess I was wondering if I could iPhone on a particular screen, the NFC device close to it would say trigger a script on the screen.
You could have it wait forever by setting the timeout higher, but once it reads a single value, it will get that value and send it to the show NFC read result script. And you could write the script to continue. So if you had FileMaker in this script and you said loop, it would read it and get an answer and read it, present the answer, read it, get the answer. So you could write a loop around the outside of this to, let's say there was an NFC device on everything that someone is purchasing. You can go from one item to the next, but you'd have to add a loop around the outside of this to do that.
Okay, like let's just say, for example, in a production setting in a warehouse, and you for inventory, you'd be reading,
You'd have to add the loop around the outside of this thing.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, the idea of the NFC thing is to pull a result. Like what is the NFC value of whatever you scan? So once it gets a value, there's no reason to wait. Otherwise, the script would never process what you've asked us to process.
This is not no different than barcoding that we've had in the past. It's very similar. It's just another mechanism or media that we're scanning and reading.
Right. Like when it was barcoding, of course, you have to actively put the camera on, and with NFC, you only need proximity. So.
Right. There was another question about proximity.
Within NFC, you need
yeah, that's right. You only need proximity and for NFC to be turned on in some cases for phones.
We don't have an NFC trigger if you're asking for that. Does that make sense? Like a trigger, you know how we have a bunch of trigger types?
Right.
We don't have an NFC trigger type.
Yes, you do. With workflows, you have triggers with workflows. You can actually run an FMP URL. With shortcuts, you can do a FMP URL to launch a FileMaker script that does whatever you want.
Yeah, that's not inside the product though. You're mixing outside with something inside. Yeah, that would work though.
How would you try the FMP URL?
In the when you encode your NFC chip, you can put the FMP URL in the chip, And then when you scan it with shortcuts, it would run that trigger.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's a workaround to something that we don't have. It will work though.
But then you still have to push a button to initiate something. It's just going to be outside of FileMaker.
Not if you're working with the shortcuts.
To initiate the shortcut as well.
Just bring proximity. I have an NFC chip right here in my hand. If I put it to my phone, I can make it open my garage door.
The shortcut will read the NFC chip.
Yep. And I can have it run a garage door open, and I can have it put a log in FileMaker with the FMP URL.
Yeah, and there's
The shortcut is the listener, basically.
right. There are communities that open up their gates when people have an NFC tag in their car. They're good for about 15 feet sometimes.
Cool.
You could use a Siri shortcut too.
I would mention that Josh has written a blog post about this, and this example file will also be included in the blog post. The only thing missing is you just have to get some cards, and so you can experiment with that.
All cards are not created equal. So just buyer beware, find the right ones, and even if you buy them, when they come, they're not going to be recognized by FM Go. They may be recognized by shortcuts or some other apps. You have to add data to them, and once the data is added to them, then you can use them. I tried to use some a couple years ago FM or some DevCon badges. It didn't recognize them, but shortcuts recognize them. So it's, you have to program them and have some data that is in the more modern range, I guess, to read them.
Will the tags that you purchase to put on your key ring or your purse or whatever work for this?
Yeah, if they're the right sort, they should be able to. I think it depends on the type of tag that you purchase. Definitely does that. But yeah, there's also like RFID type tags too that I've used to get into buildings that don't get picked up by phones or such.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there are certain frequencies that different tags operate at.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to tell. So I don't mean to, put a little promo in here, but to be able to explain this, I have to tell you that, like, I sell NFC tags and readers and writers as well. And usually when customers need cards to be programmed or want a specific type of reader, we ask them to send us the card, and then we make sure that the programming for the device works. So it's a lot more complicated and a lot more complex than barcoding.
Yeah, so like I have two key fobs that look the same that are both used for access control for different buildings, and one of them can be read by the phone and the other one can't. All my library books can be read by the phone. So it just depends on what frequency the reader's set up and the card's set up for too.
And no, you can't scan your cat or dog. It doesn't read it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a different chip type.
You could, but that's it's even more complex. Animal scanning is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, hopefully this will get more universal as time goes.
Any last questions for Josh? Cool.
The link for the that blog post will be available later.
Yeah, will be forthcoming. It's not published yet, but it's coming. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Oh, there was a question that we missed.
Which one?
Taylor asked, how does this compare with beacons?
Oh, yeah.
Not sure what beacons are.
Beacons are built into all the Apple tech. So Apple TV, Apple, etc.
Beacons are Bluetooth.
Yeah, they're Bluetooth. Okay.
But with the FileMaker, with the FM Go, you have to initiate the beacon scanning in order for it to actually render. There's no automated way to do that, unfortunately.
They'll send out a signal that have to be powered, whereas NFC cards are stateless devices.
I think the originally beacons were thought to be like you walk through a store, and as you walk through the store, you could send a text message to someone saying, "Hey, are you interested in a pair of shoes?"
Yeah, the Apple Store app uses that. If you walk into the store, with your phone, you have an appointment or something like that.
We all have that in any store that you walk into or any place. I'm actually not looking forward to that.
You have to have the app on your phone that is in the same address space as the beacon itself. So because you have the Apple Store app on your phone, that's why the Apple Store beacons work. If you have the Disneyland app on your phone, they have beacons hidden throughout the park that track how long you're waiting in lines and stuff. And that's not something that they're using for you, but just so that your phone knows and reports back to your app. So Bluetooth beacons are powered devices that are constantly sending out signals when your phone is listening. And if you have a corresponding app, the right namespace for it, it'll respond appropriately.
Every time I drive to Starbucks, my app pops up.
You guys have kind of been dancing around this, but beacons, my understanding, the range of them is like 150 feet from your device, where an NFC is like measured in inches. So that's one of the big differences. Somebody already called out the Bluetooth technology. That's the other big difference, but the range is really the big difference between the two.
So
that
Yeah, Bluetooth 5 has a range of like 800 feet, something like that. It's pretty long.
So NFC chips can have different ranges as well. I think, we basically mentioned the proximity, which, is a very short range, and that's the cheaper version. If you go to running events, you'll notice that people are wearing either a bracelet or something tied to their shoes, and basically they just kind of run through the finish line, and yet they are all red. And that's accomplished with antennas or antennae, and that's a much more expensive game.
Next demo?
Hi, my name is Brendan. I work at BSMAX. And I'd like to just note quickly that a man named Alec Gregory was supposed to be giving the presentation tonight. Unfortunately, he can't make it, so I'll be filling in for him. Oh, let me share my screen, actually. Okay. Yeah, and another note, some of the stuff I'm covering tonight, we've included in a blog post written by Alec, which talks about kind of dynamic forms with JavaScript and web viewers. So it's an interesting read. If you have time, I highly suggest looking at it. And included in here is also the example file that I'll be showing off a little bit. Yeah, and that's about it. So to get started here, I did whip together some slides for this. Okay. All right, so welcome to WebViewer Integration in FileMaker 19. I'll talk about some of the current issues we face with versions below 19 in terms of how to do JavaScript integration. Then I'll talk about what's new in FileMaker. Steve already covered this. In case there's anyone here who doesn't quite have a good grasp on it, I'll try to go through this step by step, and then I'll show off. So, yeah, so start off with current issues with web integration with FileMaker. Prior to 19, there's no on-demand sort of connectivity between your FileMaker client and the WebViewer itself. Now there are ways around this that intelligent people have come up with. So one of them is using the hash at the end of a URL to pass data from FileMaker into the WebViewer, and then in order to pass data back from the WebViewer into FileMaker, you usually use an FMP URL to kind of act as like that callback. Yeah, and so there's no clean method of doing this, which is one of the things that FileMaker 19 will help solve. Yeah, so the first is a new script step called perform JavaScript in WebViewer. And it does exactly as it says. It performs JavaScript in the WebViewer. Yeah, so it requires a function name, and this needs to be a sort of globally scoped function, and then your parameters that you want to give to the function within the JavaScript. Yeah, so that's the script step side of this. The other side is the JavaScript side. There's a new object called FileMaker, which is globally scoped, and inside it you have a method called perform script, and again does exactly as you would expect. It performs, given the script name, it performs that script within FileMaker, and you can pass parameters into that script as well. So the cool thing about these two functions is it sort of builds that bridge between FileMaker and JavaScript within the WebViewer. So you're able to a lot more easily now back and forth. So things like if you have a WebViewer with some settings open and you like check an option, but you also want to save those settings within FileMaker itself. So the next time they open the WebViewer, it's back to their state that they set it at. Things like that become a lot easier with these tools, and also generally passing data back and forth. Yeah, so yeah, let me look at the stacked example that we have. Okay. Cool. Again, this is available in the blog post. Yeah, but it's more just a proof of concept, right? Let's say this is all in a WebViewer. I click add a thing. I can make my thing this size, select a color, give it a name, names, thought. Okay, and then stack it, right? And so this is pretty cool because now that it's in here, right, I can open it up. I can change like something here, save it to the stack, and again, it calls back into FileMaker, sending whatever I put in the stack back into FileMaker, right? So if I go to layout mode, browse mode, it's still there, right? All that integration is made a lot easy. Yeah, and not to dive too deep into the code here, right? The important part is, this. Now, there are a couple caveats with both the script step and this perform script. You can perform a script inside FileMaker, but you cannot get the results if that script exits script and returns the result. Now, that being said, there's a lot of, kind of really nifty people out there who've kind of sort of, figured out a way to perform a script and also get the results. I too made an integration, which I'm currently working on, but yeah, it's pretty cool. The other thing is inside the scripts, you can perform JavaScript inside the web viewer, but you cannot get the results of that script, of that JavaScript function within the script itself. Yeah, so important to note they work asynchronously. Yeah, people have been using promises to sort of grab that result back here. And the other way is a little bit more complicated if you want to get the result. But you know, there's definitely, if you play around with it for like a long enough time, I'm sure you can figure out something. Yeah, but anyway, these two things are really cool. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to any like future integrations we'll build with this. Yeah, and that's pretty much it I have for mine. Just trying to be cognizant of time.
Taylor had a statement. There's a bug in FileMaker.performScript.java because it causes the script to run right away, which takes priority over any other scripts running at the same time.
Yeah. So I think what he's talking about. Yeah. So what he's talking about is if you do this, right? Let's say you perform the script here. It starts performing the script, and then you call it again here, maybe a different script, WebViewer Receiver 2 or whatever. This one will actually sort of interrupt the first one, I think, and begin execution of this one.
Got it.
Yeah, and then when this one finishes, well, let's pretend we don't have these. When the second one finishes, this one will. Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about.
That's actually not a FileMaker issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a JavaScript will run without waiting for responses for things. If you want responses, you have to kind of teach it how to wait.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how that mechanism works. You mentioned promises.
I did, yeah. I mean, promises are wonderful. And we can go into them in depth at maybe a later date. But for now, a promise is literally just a promise, right? Like I promise I will return you a result. So if you had, what I did was I built a wrapper class that essentially calls this function or this method. And so if I said like, I called mine FM promise, right? One way to handle it is if you do a.perform script, right? Name of the script, some params, and then because I have this returning a promise, you can do .then, right? Whatever the result of the script is, and in here you can again do like a perform script. So this way you know that when finished execution, you can, once then it's done, you can perform a script right after that. So this is like one way people have come up with dealing with this issue. If for some reason you need to perform script multiple times, in the same scope here, as opposed to, in FileMaker, having this be part of the name script, if that makes sense. Yeah, but that's generally one way to solve it.
Yeah, in other words, you have to program in your JavaScript to resolve this.
Yes,
exactly. FileMaker misbehaving. If you call FileMaker with script A and it's still running, it will cancel that script when you call script B. That's intended behavior. Mm-hmm. So you need to delay your scripts until they're finished.
Keith, if there's a script already running, I guess you can't interact. You can't trigger another script, right? Because that's the normal behavior right now, right? So
it depends on what technology you're in. If you're in Pro, it will put the current script on the stack and pause it, and then run the script that you called, and then return to the original script. But if you're in any other technology, if you're in DAPI or you're in Java, it will cancel whatever script you're in and run the new script.
Even if the script that is running has allow user abort off?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But
more testing required.
I'm not sure about that. The stuff that I've tested has always had the default behavior.
Right.
So yeah, so basically, when you're in these other languages, they have mechanisms for dealing with it, and you have to use their mechanisms to perform the behavior that you want. You have to remember that JavaScript, the main key that it exists for is to live in a browser. And you can have spawn off dozens of JavaScripts at the same time, and you can query the server to perform certain actions like downloading of graphics and so forth. And it will do all that multi-threaded all at the same time.
Right.
And Pro is a single user with a single thread to the server. Think of it that way. Pro is not, and I shouldn't say Pro, FileMaker clients in any form are a single thread to the server.
Brendan has a question from Kent. Perform JavaScript and the WebViewer has the ability to pass multiple parameters. Any chance of multiple parameters coming to perform script, FileMaker?
Yeah, that's new, isn't it? Dialogue here? Is that what he's referring to?
Perform JavaScript.
Yeah, parameters.
Yep.
Yeah, like I mean, yeah, like currently, you know, people use in general like JSON set element to pass multiple parameters between scripts. So something like this would be kind of cool too. I can't shed any light on that. I don't work at Claris, but
yeah, put in that SCR. I think I've heard that a few times. And unfortunately, I can't say anything about it. It's like announcing pre-released features type of thing. I can't do that.
okay, I'll just cancel this then. Yeah, I mean that's it for my presentation. Yeah, definitely post. And I will pass it over to Vince if there are no more questions.
A comment to everybody. So for those of you who are interested in taking a small step into JavaScript, but have basically the same kind of general knowledge as I do, there is a pretty decent help topic in the help system that will walk you through step-by-step creating some interaction between your FileMaker data and data in a WebViewer using JavaScript. It allows you to put in a simple field, a slider from 0 to 10, a color picker, and I believe one other thing. So if you want to just be able to play around with it and get started and kind of maybe customize that from there, I would recommend going into the help and doing a search for JavaScript, and all the information that you need will be in there.
Cool. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, over to you, Vince.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Brendan. And thank you for also jumping in at last minute and, you know, kind of diving in on what Alec did. So Alec's blog post is available there. I posted the link in the chat. So, okay. Share my screen here.
Hey Vince, is that you type?
Nope, not me. That's me, sorry. I got a gamer's key and it's very loud.
Oh, where's my thing here? So where am I? Yeah, here. Okay. Should be able to.
So impressed with your stamina, by the way.
Yeah, still jet lagged, but anyway. All right, so I'm going to go quickly. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but I'm just going to touch over some new highlights and new features in this release and some of the compatibility and support for FileMaker 19 specific items. So, so first off, let's see here. So just going to cover some new enhancements to a progressive dashboard that we added. We also added an ability to send out Slack notifications when you fix problems. So there's a big integration with Slack that we've added. A lot of these features in this release are all centered around team collaboration and seeing as inspectors built as a FileMaker file that you can host on your server. The whole point of it is to have the team kind of work together. So a lot of our features are centered around collaboration. I'll show how, there's the new feature, Siri shortcuts, enable Siri shortcuts donation, and how that is revealed in the scripts and how you can search on it. We added a new feature kind of stemming off of the work that we've done in the past with the script universe. This is kind of a cool feature called Script Monitor. We'll cover that. We'll talk about tags, logicator support, and extra information. So first off, this is running FileMaker 19, and this is analyzing Inspector. There's 24 analyses of Inspector over the course of about a year. And as you can tell, like at the very beginning, a few weeks or maybe a month into development, we ran an analysis, and the amount of elements and dependencies and calculations was very low. There was a few problems, but each one of these bars represents one of these rows up here, and the color coding is basically items, calculations, and dependencies are the bars, and the overlay is problems, calculation problems, script problems, layout object problems. And as you can see over time, we add more code, we introduce more problems, and then we make a concerted effort to reduce, maybe get rid of some code that's obsolete or not needed, and make an effort to get to zero problems. So you get this happy smiley face if you get to zero, by the way. Okay, so that's the dashboard. The Slack notifications, we've had them in the current release 7.0, but in the new release, there's an ability to, when you mark a problem as fixed, it can also send a Slack notification to the channel that you set up the connection to for the solution, and your teammates can be informed of problems that are getting fixed. Enable Siri shortcuts basically shows up with a little microphone here in your list of scripts. So there's included menu, run with full access, and now this is other option that shows up with the microphone if the script is donated to Siri shortcuts. And you can also search it using Logicator. We'll see some other searches with Logicator. So that's built into 7.1. One of the cool things with this release is we have an ability for you to generate a script monitor of any size based on the solution. So the idea is, I'm going to get out of my keynote here. I'm going to go to FileMaker, and yeah. So I don't know if you hear the sounds, but some of my teammates are actually in there right now, poking around in this file. And when you run an event in here, So there's different people running events there. They'll light up the nodes in the monitor. And the way this works is in Inspector, you run an analysis. And once you've run an analysis, you can go to Script Monitor. And you can create any number of these monitors. So for example, I created a smaller monitor. And this monitor is only just a handful of scripts. And if I were to export this file, right, what happens is I can save this file just like I did here. And this file is connected to this other file. So basically in here, I'm basically listening for every single one of these scripts that are run in this event management file. So in essence, I could basically just have the monitor open, and I can see when certain critical scripts are being run. You can have sounds attached to the scripts. So you can have a bell go off when a particular script is triggered. It might be interesting if for uses where you want to monitor some critical events like imports or sales or inventory or whatever. So that's the script monitor. I go back to here.
You might want to close the file.
Yeah, let me close the file. I'll close the file for now. Okay, so the other thing that we've been doing is we've been using Inspector collaboratively to go through and find code that is unreferenced. And there's a couple of tools you can use. There's a tagging method that we can tag across the found set pretty much all these scripts that have 0 references. And then what you end up getting is a little tag label next to these. And the beauty of that is that you can also search using Logicator for tags that have whatever tag you put in there, and then it'll find those records. So you could tag things for delete. Your team could look them up and verify that they're indeed things that they're not using. However, one cool thing with Inspector, let me show you, is that we have this ability to mark things with a manual reference. So let's say here I have 99 scripts in this solution, and let's say this script right here could be used by some outside system that relies on this script. It could be maybe a Claris Connect trigger. It could be some other outside script, a system that calls it, like let's say a Tableau action that calls this script. What you can do is you can add what we call as a manual reference, and so you can add a note here, used by Tableau. And so if you add it, what it does is it increments a counter, a reference for it. And when you look at references for that script, it shows up as a reference. So that means in the future, when you run another analyses, these manual references will carry forward. So once you've documented it, it's there until you remove it. That's easy to remove as well. You can go to references and just remove it, and it's gone. So that's really cool, especially for a lot of the stuff that's going on these days, where you might have web viewers that call scripts that the only place they get called is from a web viewer inside some JavaScript. So you might want to start documenting those so that when you're looking through your code and trying to clean up code, that you're not going to come across things that you delete by accident that are actually referenced elsewhere. A few other things I was going to mention. One really cool thing is with Inspector, when you run an analysis, you have these different options here. This is used for comparison. This is extra information that's finally getting released in this version, and I'll show you that. And this generates table distance, so you can look at how many hops away fields are on layouts or portals and value lists. So, but let's look at extra information because that's really, really helpful. So for example, let's take a look here, this demo. When you look at the analysis, there's these different tabs up here. If I go to extra information, we cross-reference a lot of different information. So it's at your fingertips. So for example, perform script by name. I want to see every place where I have a perform script by name script step. And so here's one reference of it. If I click here, it takes me to that actual step where this call is performing this script by name. Okay, so that's just one of a whole bunch of different ways that you can look at your data. I mean, we could spend an hour just on this, but actually this has a very little data. But let me look at a file that has a lot more data, like Inspector, and look at things like layout destination. So if you're ever wondering about, indirection, here's a perfect example. Here's all the places where I use go to layout by name, by calculation. So I have to be careful to understand the solution before I go off and just go ahead and delete layouts that are unreferenced. And in those cases, what you could do is a combination of things. If you know that a particular layout is being referenced, let's say in a script where it's going to a specific layout, you could go to layouts and you could go ahead and in those layouts, let me go find layouts that are unreferenced. Actually, all these layouts have references. But let's say I didn't have a reference on a layout. I could go ahead and enter a manual reference. And so that would remind me, if I'm checking just for layouts that have 0 references, not to delete it. So the extra information is very handy. Again, there's a lot there that's available and lots to look at. What was the other one I was gonna, oh yeah, just in the demo today that we were talking about, what was it, get application version, was that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so like here, you could go look up functions, and then over here you could say get application version, and here's a reference, 2 references of get application version. So this is one way to go find the references for that. So here's a field, it has a calculation, it calls get application version, and there's the word advanced. So that wouldn't be a reference, but you get a reference to every place where you're using get application version. However, Inspector also has the ability to search across schema and calculations. So I could perform a search, and sure enough, I get pointed back to that field calculation that references the string here. So there's different ways to get at the data, what I'm saying. So anyway, just to recap, again, this was the extra information. The last thing was, so we looked at the new progressive dashboard. We talked about sending out Slack notifications when you fix problems, how to see scripts that are marked with Siri shortcuts donation. That's a 19 feature, so that's there. We talked about script monitor, talked about tags. Logicator support is built in across the product. If you have never used Logicator, it's very cool. And Mark has been working very hard on a new version of it that will be announced soon. And but just to not even with add-ons, just to add Logicator support to your solution literally takes under a minute. It's very easy and it's very elegant.
Logicator going to be an add-on?
I'm not going to steal the thunder from Mark. I'll let you figure it out. So
it's fun to hear you guys say that.
I'm pretty sure it will. But anyway, we talked about extra information. And so 7.1, we just wrapped up some testing this week. And I think there was some issue with putting the links live today. So for sure, early next week, it will be announced officially and will be available. So any questions?
Anything in there to help audit security a little easier? I have trouble, like right now, if you want to find out if you're using like Active Directory, you want to find out if a specific person has access to something, or vice versa. You're looking at an object like a script or a field and say, who has access to this? You kind of have to follow the breadcrumbs all the way back, and it'd be nice if you could just get a report that says, here's all the people who can do this to that.
Right. So if you're part of a group, then you're associated with a privilege set, right? So is that like, and so if you were to print out like all the people that are in that group and then report back to have a view here of let's say a particular script or something like this, or like here we don't have like an actual report that you can print out because for example this system has 1093 scripts, but one thing that we do have is we have this view of security, which is what we call a security perspective. And so you could look at a single script and see under each privilege set what the access would be for that single script. And that works for fields, layouts, base tables or tables, value lists, scripts. So you have this.
How long has that been there?
That's been there a while. There were some issues with the 7.0 release, but it's in there for this release. Yeah. So maybe that's helpful to you, Eric. I'm not sure.
A good start. I was thinking like if there's a way to import our Active Directory group list, and like that way we can actually see all the individuals in addition to that.
Yeah, I definitely would like to look into doing something like that.
Eric?
Yeah. Yes?
Were you trying to find out who's logged in with that name and what they've done?
Not necessarily, although that would be interesting too. But mostly, when sometimes if you have several groups and a lot of users in those groups, and there's kind of like everything's a few steps away trying to figure out who has access to what. So like if I'm looking at a field and I want to see, well, who has access to this field? It's FileMaker's security isn't like configured that way. It's not in a table that you could just look something like that up. You'd have to go through and look at all the groups, right? All the privilege sets, I mean.
We don't own those groups, but we use them on the active domain.
Right.
So you can log out. You can log out users' names and the group that they logged in with and what FileMaker group was used at the time, which is something I do for my users because we were having problems with the host OS behaving correctly. So we added that a long time ago so we could figure out problems. But querying the domain, there are full tools that have that already. We use one called Group Manager that allows you to see the list of people who are in a group on a domain, but that's only if your IS&T department is going to allow you access to that.
Oh yeah. Right now we have them run a script for us that gives us that however so often. But yeah, then I need to connect it to what's described in the FileMaker security to make that connection.
Right. But correct me if I'm wrong, Vince, but you don't collect active information. You collect DDR and
Yeah.
information from it. So it's not active that he's collecting.
Yeah, no, but Keith, what he's saying is, if he were to look up a user, and he would know that this user, let's say, is logged in under a certain privilege, he could look at, for example, all these fields and see, oh, okay, this person has access to these fields. They're all modifiable, or they have access to under said privilege, like layouts. They could go look at security and say, okay, for such a layout, they have layout access and data access to all these layouts. So it's a quick way for him to see security.
The problem
that way around was nice. What you were showing before, where you could actually look at a specific object and see what privilege sets had access to that too, without having to go through all the privilege sets separately, right? Is that what you were showing?
You could pick each. Well, this one lists all the privilege sets in one popover for one, right? But you have the ability up here to toggle to another privilege, right? So I could go look at data entry, full access or read only, right? So
the only problem that I have with this is that it's only a picture of now, and that doesn't mean when you collected the picture of the database, say yesterday versus now, and you try to tie that together with the group administration, that would be a picture of now, and the database picture could be from a couple of days ago.
Yeah, of course.
And it may not match those pictures.
Yeah, understood. And unless you make changes to production, if you've made no changes to production, then this would be an accurate reflection of who has access.
Except that the domain admin probably added or subtracted people from those groups since you took the picture of the database. It all has to be kind of collected at the same time.
Yeah.
Is the process pretty for updating this pretty manual, or can you actually schedule to say, hey, every so often let's update this or something like that?
You'd have to generate a DDR and import it in. If you have it hosted, it'll move the files to the server and run the whole process on the server. So it's not automated yet. My hope is when we switch over to using Save as XML, which is kind of the foundation of the new direction of what hopefully will become also a new type of DDR. There's a lot of rich information in there. However, none of the vendors that consume the DDR now can make use of it because there's a big gaping hole in it. It doesn't document any of the calculation chunks. So like if 50% of your solution is about calculations, and calculations have references like dependencies to fields and other fields and functions and custom functions, all that stuff is not output in the current Save as XML. And none of us want to write a parser to parse out the calculations to figure those things out. So my hope is once they do add details for calculations, then it's going to be a great tool to switch over to. We've already started work on the new format. A lot of things are very different. However, without those changes, it's not something that we can use.
Good. All right. Well,
so that's it for me.
That's our 2 hours.
Yeah, there you go. Any other remaining questions? Again, the official announcement will be early next week. So cool.
Ton, Vince. Time to get some sleep, man.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Sure.
All right.
All right. Well, I guess we're gonna stop recording.
I will. I'm moving my mouse over there right now. Where?